Chicos, buenas tardes. Vamos a comenzar nuestra clase número 31. Let's start our class number 31st. Um, today, today is Tuesday, so we are going to revise all the vocabulary and grammar corresponding to Unit 7. ¿Cuáles son tus tradiciones? Which are your traditions? Or which are your holidays? Uh, next Thursday. No, I'm laughing because suddenly I was thinking of something else and I got like blank. So next Thursday we are going to practice. All the oral expression corresponding to this same Unit 8. So today, Tuesday, we will revise vocabulary and grammar. Next Thursday, we will practice the oral expression. So first thing first, which was the vocabulary corresponding to this Unit 7? Los días feriados, the holidays, and los estados físicos y anímicos, like state of mind, so how are you feeling, and so on. Vamos a comenzar with los días feriados, the holidays. So, holidays, días feriados, días feriados. There are different holidays all around the world. Here in Guyana, like basically in any other country, we have El Año Nuevo, New Year. We have Los Reyes Magos. Los Reyes Magos is a very special celebration that we have in Spanish-speaking countries. So, like Los Reyes Magos. Reyes Magos is like the three wise men, right? But in Spanish-speaking countries, that's the day when kids receive the gifts, like Christmas gifts. So we celebrate the 24th, yeah, not the 25th, the 24th of December. That is what we call Nochebuena. So we have our Nochebuena that night. The family gathers, persons eat, whoever want to drink drinks, and so on. And then the kids have to wait until the 6th of January to receive their gifts. Of course, it's parents who buy the gift, but they think that it's the three wise men riding camels who come to bring their gift. It's a nice tradition that we have in Spanish-speaking countries. So our Christmas start the 24th of December and finish the 6th of January. So the 6th of January is Los Reyes Magos. El Día de los Enamorados. So 14th of February, Valentine, we call it Día de los Enamorados. La Semana Santa, Holy Week. So those with a red asterisk are those that change every year, right? So the Holy Week this year is going to be from the 29th of March till the 5th of April. The 5th of April is a Sunday. That's going to be La Pascua. La Pascua. El Ramadán finished recently del 17 de febrero al 19 de marzo. El Día de la Madre, the Mother's Day, 10 de mayo. El Día del Padre, Father's Day, 21 de junio. So these 2 days, like all the other days, marked with the asterisk, change every year. But El Día de la Independencia, Independence Day, that's the same day every year. The same date, not the same day. So in Guyana is el 26 de mayo. So we have more holidays throughout the year. El cumpleaños, birthday, I put May 31st because that is my birthday. So obviously that changed according to the person. El Día de las Brujas, Halloween. Día de las Brujas. Día de las Brujas. Many Spanish-speaking persons, many Spanish speakers say Halloween, just like that. But the actual Spanish equivalent is Día de las Brujas. Bruja is witch. So el Día de las Brujas is like witch day. Not wish, witch. Días de Todos los Santos, All Saints Day. So that's a they celebrate that in many churches, not necessarily in Spanish-speaking churches. But El Día de los Muertos, the 2nd of November, the Day of the Dead, that's actually a Hispanic tradition. They follow it especially in Mexico, but basically in most Spanish-speaking countries, they follow that holiday. El Día de los Muertos, the Day of the Dead. If you haven't watched, if you have watched the movie Coco, so that's a nice movie, an animated movie about El Día de los Muertos, the Day of the Dead. So it sounds creepy. Person celebrating death, but it's not like. So that day, in many Spanish-speaking countries, you go to cemeteries. If your dead relative used to like, eating, reading, drinking, whatever, you carry that to the cemetery. You sit by the grave and you drink, you play music, you whatever. So you do that, honoring your dead ones. So it's kind of, it's sad, but it's a little bit comforting at the same time. I don't really follow that day, but many of my relatives in my family they follow it. It's a nice tradition in Spanish-speaking countries. El Día de los Muertos. El Día de Acción de Gracias. Gracias means thanks. So el Día de Acción de Gracias, Thanksgiving, the 26th of November. El Hanukkah. That's a Jewish celebration. And change every year. La Nochebuena, that is what I was telling you about. That is Christmas Eve. That is when Spanish speakers actually celebrate Christmas the night before, the 24th of December. Christmas is all around the world the 25th of December, but in Spanish-speaking countries, the the very day that we celebrate is the 24th, so Christmas Eve. And La Noche Vieja, that's the biggest party in the entire Christmas period, which is from the 24th of December till the 6th of January. So La Noche Vieja, the 21st of December, that's the biggest party in the year, the biggest party in the year. So, well, these are basically same celebrations that you have, except maybe for El Día de los Muertos. I would say, let me check back. So, well, whoever celebrate Ramadan celebrates Ramadan. Christians celebrate Pascua, and then the Jewish celebrate El Hanukkah. So, mhm. Okay, yeah, these are basically the holidays that we have in Spanish-speaking countries. Again, basically same holidays that you have here in Guyana, basically the same. So you have to know uh, what means, what is the name of what we celebrate for example, on February the 14th. So we call it Día de los Enamorados. So how they can ask you this in the exam? Well, you have a blank and you have to complete it. If they tell you something related to celebrations, is a day when persons who are in love give each other gifts and so on, and you have a space to complete, and you have to choose in a blank, or you have to choose in a multiple choice question and so on, where you have to select the right one. So that's the reason why you have to know which one is the celebration and which day they celebrate each one of those. So this is part of the vocabulary, guys, that we studied in this unit 7. Estados físicos y anímicos. So if you translate that literally, it's like physical and emotional states. Physical and emotional states. It's like how you feeling physically and how do you feel emotionally. So in English, when I ask you, how are you? How are you feeling? You use the verb to be to answer. How? You say, for example, I am bored, I am happy, I am tired, I am confused, I am depressed, I am vexed, I am nervous, I am busy, I am worried, I am sad, I am sick, and so on. So that is how you answer the question, how are you, or how are you feeling? Like, I'm feeling like that. Basically, you use the verb to be. The answer is I am. If you want to say that somebody is, let's say, busy, you say, my brother is busy. Mi hermano está ocupado. So, yo estoy, I am. Mi hermano está, he is, and so on. So, that could be very easy. But Spanish speaking persons always complicating matters. There are 7 particular states of like physical states or emotional states that call for an next verb. For to be hot, to be cold, to be hungry, to be afraid, to be in a rush, to be thirsty, or to be sleepy, we don't say estoy, like I am. We say tengo, tengo. So if you want to say that you are hot, you don't say I am hot. You say I have it. Yeah, crazy as it sounds. So I have heat is tengo calor. So you don't say estoy. Estoy is for most the physical and emotional states. But for this specific 7, you don't use the verb estoy in front of the word, in front of the state. You use tengo, like I have. So I am hot, tengo calor. I am cold, the second one in black, tengo frío. I am hungry, tengo hambre. Tengo hambre. The fourth one, I am afraid. Tengo miedo. Tengo miedo. I am in a rush. I am in a hurry. The first one on the right. Tengo prisa. I am thirsty. I want to drink. So, tengo sed. And I am sleepy. Tengo sueño. So you use tengo for these 7 physical states or emotional states. Let me say which one is physical. Calor is physical. Frío is physical. Hambre is physical. Afraid. To be afraid is physical or emotional? To be in a rush? Anyhow, well,
Emotional.
emotional is emotional to be afraid, and to be in a rush. To be in a rush is emotional too, I think. To be thirsty is physical, and to be sleepy is physical. Well, they are mixed there. So you use tengo for these 7. But for all the others, like in English, I am sad, I am happy, I am in love, you use estoy. Just like in English, estoy means I am. So there are 7 exceptions, but for most, you use estoy. Let me tell you the meaning of all this one by one quickly. Estoy aburrido. The first one, I am bored. Estoy alegre, I am happy. Estoy cansado, I am tired. Estoy confundido, I am confused. Estoy contento means I am happy also. It means also I am happy. No, it means I'm happy also. Estoy deprimido, I am depressed. Estoy enamorado, I am in love. So the next column, the column on the right, estoy enfermo, I am sick. Estoy enojado, I am vexed, I am angry. Estoy irritado, I am edgy, like I am irritated. Estoy nervioso, I am nervous. Estoy ocupado, I am busy. Estoy preocupado, I am worried. And finally, estoy triste, I am sad. Mhm. And again, the 7 exceptions. I am hot, tengo calor. I am cold, tengo frío. I am hungry, tengo hambre. I am afraid, tengo miedo. I am in a rush, tengo prisa. I am thirsty, tengo sed. I'm sleepy, tengo sueño. So, any question about the way to answer? So far we knew how to say how are you? ¿Cómo estás? Estoy bien, estoy mal, estoy regular. You basically knew how to say that. But now you can, I mean, be more specific when you answer the question, how are you? Like, how are you feeling? So then you can say something else, more beyond estoy bien, estoy mal. So any question about these two slides? How to talk about how you are feeling?
No, senor.
Questions? Well, that's not bad. That's good. So we can move to grammar quickly. What was the grammar? What was the grammar that we studied in this unit 7? Well, we studied the irregular verbs, the irregular verbs. So we had studied the regular verbs already. We studied the reflexive verbs, and we studied two special and specific verbs, the verb estar and the verb tener. So this is related to what we just saw about emotional, physical and emotional states. So when we use estar and when we use tener. So we basically saw that item number 3 already. So let's focus on the item number 1 and item number 2. First of all, los verbos irregulares. I've been teaching this course, guys, for almost 10 years at UG, this same course, SPA 1003. And every year, I mean, since I think since the second year, no, since the third year, I was teaching this course because that was when we started working online in 2020, or it was before, I don't remember. Well, anyhow, around that time, uh, I prepared this PowerPoint that I update, I modify, I improve every year. But these specific PowerPoints related to irregular verbs were like basically untouched. Um, Eh, about irregular verbs, you have to know that there are many regular verbs in Spanish, like there are many irregular verbs in English, in Russian, in German, in French, in any language. We have irregular verbs, a lot. But that's not scary. That's not scary at all. I mean, it was a little bit scary when I started studying the irregular verbs in English, but after a certain time, I realized that I simply had to follow patterns. So as long as I learned the patterns, that was not going to be hard at all. Yeah, a little bit hard, but not that hard. So what I'm telling you all this, and I started telling you about my PowerPoints, because I used to teach till the last academic year for this section, I use 17 slides. In each one of these slides, I had one different irregular verb. So I used to teach 17 irregular verbs in this section. And then in the next unit, I used to teach a few more. But in this unit, I taught all the time 17 irregular verbs. So this year, I'm going to try something a little bit different. Instead of teaching you verb after verb, just what you are seeing there for each one of the verbs. So the entire conjugation in simple present for each one of the verbs. That was really overwhelming, not for me, basically for my students. So I will try to do it a little bit lighter this year and see how it works. So let me teach you. There are four there are five patterns. There are five patterns that we have to learn when we. Okay, uh, something else that you have to. Yeah, the introduction is going to be a little bit longer because you have to know the kind of thing we are dealing with here. I teach another course at UG. This is the SPL. SPL means, I mean, that's a code for Spanish linguistics. So it's a Spanish linguistic course. SPL 2201. It's a second year course. And the name of that course is Spanish Morphology and Syntax. So morphology is the structure of the word, and syntax is the structure of the sentence. So how those words, you put those words together to make a sentence. So if you are not really into humanities, letters, and so on, it could be a little bit boring course for you. So it's not for my students because those students who are doing that course are the future bachelors in Spanish. So long story short, in that course, in morphology and syntax, this same week, so it's a coincidence, I'm going to teach them the irregular verbs. So you should see how my students, my future Bachelor of Spanish students study this. So there are like 1 million patterns, not 1 million, just 10 patterns that they study. Yeah, it's like a lot, but I mean, they are going to be linguistics, so they have to study that in depth. So you are just going to learn 5 patterns out of many that Spanish language has. So I think that if I teach you these 5 patterns, it's going to be a little bit more productive, a little bit more efficient, a little bit easier than if I teach you verb after verb, verb after verb, verb after verb. So let's try that. The patterns, which is the first pattern for irregular verbs. So first, you have to know this. What is an irregular verb in Spanish? So you know that when you are going to conjugate, so what is an irregular verb, right? That's the first thing that we're going to answer. So when we are going to conjugate the verb to speak, hablar, you know that what you do is you drop the final, you drop the ending, which is er, and this is what you get. That's the so-called stem, or the root of the verb, la raíz del verbo, and then you add the corresponding endings to that stem. So which are the endings for the er verbs? O, hablo, I speak. As, hablas, you speak. A, just the letter E, he or she speaks. Amos, AMOS. AMOS, that is we speak. And finally, AN, an. O as a, amos, an. So AN, AN. So hablos, hablo, I speak. Hablas, you speak. Habla, he or she speaks. Hablamos, we speak. Hablan, you speak. Hablan, they speak. But if you check here, habl, habl, habl is the same stem for the 6 conjugated forms. It's the same stem. This stem here, habl, which is the result of dropping the final er, the result of dropping the ending, the same stem, HABL, is the same stem for all the conjugated verbs, for the 6 conjugated verbs, or forms, I better say. So HABL, HABL, HABL for all the conjugated forms. So the stem is habl, the same stem that the unconjugated original virgin verb has is the same stem that I use when I conjugate the verb. So the stem doesn't change. The same stem that the infinitive has is the same stem that the conjugated forms have. The stem does not change. So that is a regular verb. Hablar is a regular verb in Spanish. So now, what is an irregular verb? Well, an irregular verb would be if when I conjugate these verbs, what is highlighted, instead of having HABL, I have something a little bit different. That would be an irregular verb. For example, like here. This is the verb cerrar, to close, cerrar. So if you drop the ending is ER, this stem is C-E-R-R, C-E-R-R, right? C-E-R-R. But when I conjugate the verb, do I have C-E-R-R or I have something different? Who can tell me? Who can tell me when I conjugate this verb, the stem in the infinitive, C-E-R-R, is the same stem that I keep or I modify it a little bit when I conjugate the verb? What is your answer? Same stem?
Sir, Sir, why you drop the AR? Because of yo and 2, as you keep going along, it will change. The last 2 will change.
Oh.
So for example, yo it could be Sierra, 2 could be Sierras, usted era could be Sierra. Nosotros, which means we could be Sierramos, ustedes cierran, ellos eras cierran.
Muy bien, Vanessa, muy bien. So the stem is C-E-R-R. But when I conjugate that verb, I change that stem a little bit. Instead of having C-E-R-R, in the conjugated verbs, I have C-I-E-R-R. So we change this E in the stem, I change it for IE. The E in the stem changes to IE when I conjugate the verb. And that change happens for all the grammatical forms except, as Vanessa said, for nosotros. In nosotros, we, the same stem that the infinitive has, CERR, is the same stem that the conjugated form has, CERR. So here, for nosotros, the stem does not change. And that is a pattern, guys. That is the first pattern. And that happens for that verb, cerrar, to close, but that happens for these four verbs also. It happens for pensar, it happens for empezar, it happens for perder, and it happens for encender. Pensar, the first verb on the bottom, means to think. Empezar means to start. Perder means to lose. And encender means to light or to turn on. So, again, the only thing that you need to remember, there are quite a few things that you need to remember to conjugate one irregular verb in simple present in Spanish. So the first thing that you have to remember is that you do not need to learn the conjugation of the entire verb because there are patterns. That's the first thing that you have to remember. There are patterns. The second thing that you need to remember is that the endings do not change. O, as, a, amos, an. Same endings. O, as, a, amos, an. The problem is with the stem, the root of the verb. That is a problematic thing. That's the second thing that you have to remember. First, there are patterns. Second, the problem is not with the endings. The problem is with the stem. What changes is the stem. So that's the second thing. So the third thing that you need to remember is that the actual change is the E in the infinitive changes to IE in the conjugated forms. Instead of writing CE, you write CIE. Instead of CERR, you write CIERR. That's the third thing. For all the forms, CERR, CERR, not CERR, CIERR, CIERR, CIERR. For all the forms. Except for we, except for nosotros. In nosotros, there is no change. CERR in the infinitive is the same stem that the conjugated form has. CERR, AMOS. Cerramos. We close. And that happens for all the verbs in the bottom. For example, let's conjugate the first verb, pensar, the first verb in the bottom, to think. Let's conjugate to think. Pensar. So when I drop the ER, this E changed to what again? The E changes to what, guys, in the conjugated forms? The E changes to what, guys? It changes to IE. It changes to IE. Let's leave one space for nosotros. Now, who remembered the endings for the AR verbs? O, as, a, amos, an. And this is basically how I conjugate the verb to think in simple present. Pienso, I think. Piensas, you think. piensa, he or she thinks. Piensan, you'll think. Piensan, they think. And why I left the we here? Because for we, there's no change in the stem. This same stem, PENS, that the infinitive has, is the same stem for we. See? And now I have the 6 forms for the verb pensar. I think, pienso. You think, piensas. He or she thinks, piensa. We think, pensamos. You all think, piensas. They think, piensan also. Same thing for cerrar, the verb that you have in the example, the original verb that I used for the example in the slide. Pensar, this is a verb that I just conjugated. Empezar, perder, and encender. Is the same pattern for these 6 verbs. So questions here? Okay, let's practice the same verb, pensar. Let's practice this same verb, pensar. Use the right form of the verb cerrar. Use the right form of the verb cerrar, to close. To, how do you say you close? Which one of the 6?
Cierra, C-I-E-R-R-A-S.
Tú cierras. Muy bien, perfecto. So what about nosotros?
Cierramos, C-E-R-R-A-M-O-S.
Cerramos. Muy bien. So, and so on. So you simply have to remember, you have to learn, or you have to learn to conjugate this verb following the pattern. So again, which one is a pattern? The E in the infinitive changes to IE in the conjugated form. So that is the first pattern. This is the first irregularity. Any question about this first irregularity? And again, it works also for these 5 verbs here in the bottom. The second irregularity, guys. The second irregularity is just like that one that I just explained, but the thing is that instead of having the letter E in the stem, the verb has the letter O. And that letter O changes to UE. One typical example, the verb dormir, sleep. When I drop the AR, when I drop the IR, the remaining part is DORM. DORM. So that would be the stem, DORM. But when I conjugate the verb, I don't have DORM. You can see in all the grammatical persons, DUERM. So the O changes to UE. Yo duermo, I sleep. Tú duermes, you sleep. Él or ella duerme, he or she sleeps. Unlike the other verb, there is no change in the stem for nosotros. There is no change in the stem for we. So the stem in the infinitive is DORM. We sleep is DORM plus the ending, IMOS. So there's no change in the stem for we. The changes are for all the grammatical persons except for we. That is the second pattern. I have another pattern, but that pattern is basically for only one verb. So the verb jugar, to play. The U in jugar changes to UE. Instead of J-U-G, J-U-G, I have J-U-E-G. The U changes to UE. Jugar, juego, I play. Juegas, you play. Juega, he or she plays. Jugamos, there's no change in we play. Juegan, you all play. Juegan, they play. So here you have, guys, basically in 1, 2, and 3, you have, I'm not going to mention a number because, I mean, that would be really hard to mention. But in these three, I mean, these three are the three most important irregularities. So if you learn these three, you will cover not most, but a big amount of the irregular verbs in Spanish. So because these three, the vowel irregularities are the three more common irregularities in Spanish. So, any question, guys, about these three irregularities? So the fourth pattern is very easy. It is very easy because there is one change only in the yo form, in the I form. So you will see how. And this pattern works for mainly for verbs. Hacer, to do or to make. Poner, to put. Salir, to go out. And traer, to bring. And let's see how it works. Look, the verb hacer, H-A-C-E-R, means to do, and it also means to make. So for both things in English, we have only one verb in Spanish. So the stem for yo would be H-A-C. But out of nowhere, instead of H-A-C, when I conjugate the verb for yo, the stem is H-A-G. So you see how crazy is that, right? So we change the C to G. That has phonological, historical explanations due to the evolution of language and so on. So it's not like out of nowhere. But the thing is that it changed. Instead of H-A-C, we have H-A-G. So I do or I make is hago. I do the homework. Hago la tarea. I do the homework. I bake a cake or I make a cake. Hago un pastel. I make a house, like I build a house. Hago una casa. So hago means I make. And the other forms are very much irregular. But this is a funny thing in Spanish. When only one form of the verb is irregular, that makes the entire that makes the entire verb irregular. So just because one form is irregular, the entire verb is irregular. It doesn't matter that the other 5 forms are regular. There's one irregular form, the yo form, that means that the entire verb is irregular. Okay? So hago, I make or I do. Haces, you make, you do. Hace, he makes, he does. Hacemos, we make, we do. Hacen, you all make, you all do. Hacen, they make, they do. So the only change is for yo. And that same pattern is followed by the verb poner, to put, the verb salir, to go out, the verb traer, 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 my tongue. So to bring. See, it's the same irregularity. So that G that comes out of nowhere, but only for the yo form. Only the yo form is irregular. Of course, apart from, it's not simply that some letter in the stem changes to G. There are some small changes. For example, here in poner, it's not that the N, the last letter of the stem, changes to G. The N remains in the conjugated form, so the G is added. So in this case, the C is changes to G, but here the G is added to the N. So it's something different. And in this step 1, the G is added to the L. But in this case, the regularity is that instead of T-R-A, we have T-R-A-I. So the I is added. So guys, the bad news is that you have to learn this you have to memorize these irregularities for the exam. I mean, it will take some time for you to be able to use it like in everyday conversation. That takes time, that takes a lot of practice. But for the exam, you definitely need to memorize these 4 conjugations. The conjugation for hacer, the conjugations for poner, the conjugations for salir, and the conjugations for traer. So you definitely you have to memorize this. And also you need to memorize these very irregular verbs, which are decir, oír, tener, venir, decir to tell, oír to listen, tener to have, and venir to come. So these 4 verbs are very irregular, and you have to memorize the irregularities for these 4 verbs. So this is the verb decir, to say or to tell. This is how we conjugate it. The next verb, oír, to hear. This is how we conjugate. You see how irregular is that verb? It has many irregularities. The verb tener that you already knew. The verb to have. You knew this verb already. And the verb venir, to come. So this is how we conjugate it. So again, for these 2 last, the regular yo verbs. So it's only 4. This is a good piece of news that is only 4. So 1, 2, 3, 4. But you have to memorize this conjugation. For the verbs with 2 regularities, you have to memorize them too. The 4 verbs are decir, oír, tener, and finally, venir. So these are 8 verbs that which conjugation you have to memorize. Any question about the regular verbs, guys? So here this comes to practice, a lot of practice. You need to practice a lot. And in such a short period of time is basically impossible to practice enough. So you have to practice a lot yourself. So you have many activities here to practice. Any questions about the regular verbs? So the reflexive verbs. What is a reflexive verb? So to reflect is like reflect something. So something comes to a certain surface and the thing goes back to the origin, right? So that is reflect. Like the light, if I have a surface that reflects the light, so the lights hit that surface and go back to the origin. That's exactly how reflexive verbs work. Let me tell you one example in English. You have one example here in red. She looks at herself in the mirror. So who is the person who is looking at the mirror? So she is the person who is looking at the mirror. Who is looking at herself in the mirror. The person who is looking in the mirror is she. But what she's looking? She's looking at herself. So the person who is looking in the mirror is she, but what she sees in the mirrors is herself. So the subject of the sentence and the object of the sentence is the same. She looks at herself. So that is a reflexive verb in English, and that is a reflexive verb in Spanish also. Because in Spanish, we don't say ella mira, she looks. We say ella se mira. That se is like the herself that you use in English. But instead of saying at herself, we just use a very small word that we put in front of the verb. That small word is se, S-E. So that se means that the verb mirar, look, in Spanish, just like in English, is an I was going to say irregular, is a reflexive verb. So ella mira is she looks. ella mira un carro. So she's looking at a car. I mean, she's on the road and she's staring, she's looking, she's taking a look at the car. So she's the person who looks, but she's looking something else. But when I say she looks at herself, she's the person who looks and she's the person who looked. So she is the subject and she, or herself in this case, is the object. That doesn't really happen very often in English, but it happens all the time in Spanish. So the reflexive verbs in Spanish are far, far more used than in English. To the point, I remember when I was, oh my God, now that I'm teaching you Spanish, I always remember I used to teach Spanish before, but I mean, now I have the experience to have learned another language, so I can understand. Like you say in Ghana, I know, how you say in Ghana, I know the struggle, I think that you say. Yeah, I know how hard can be. Because when I was learning English, I used to say, I shave myself every morning. Well, actually, you can say it. It's not that that is wrong, but you don't need to say yourself. The yourself is understood. So I shave every morning. So who is the person who I am shaving? So I can shave my father, I can shave my brother, I can shave my cat, I can shave something else or somebody else. But if I'm shaving myself, my own body, my face, my arm, eh, my armpits, my chest, any part of my body, I don't need to shave myself in English, but I don't need to say myself in Spanish. Because if you say I shave in Spanish, which is yo afeito, people is going to ask you, to whom? If you do not finish the sentence. Because if you say I shave, that means that you are shaving somebody else. That's the reason why, if it's yourself who you are shaving, so you have to state it and you have to say me. So yo me afeito. So like I to myself shave. And it happens basically with the verbs that describe your daily routine. Wake up, get up from the bed, shave, brush your teeth, comb your hair, put on your clothes, take off your clothes, go to bed, fall asleep. So all those verbs are in Spanish are reflexive. So if you say I wake up in English, in Spanish you have to say I to myself wake up. Yeah, it's crazy, but it is what it is. If you say in English, I put makeup on my face, of course. I mean, if you are a girl, in Spanish you have to say I to myself put makeup. Crazy. It's absolutely crazy, but it's like that. Let's see the conjugation of one reflexive verb in Spanish that is not reflexive at all in English. Get up. You don't say I to myself get up. You to yourself get up. He to himself get up. So you don't say that in English, but in Spanish you do say I to myself get up. Why? I can tell you why. But we could be speaking hours and hours about the origin of Spanish language, and that doesn't make any sense in this beginner's course. That's the reason why I simply tell you. In Spanish, you have to do it like this. So this is a so-called descriptive course because I describe the language to you. I do not explain you how the language works. I do not explain you how the language works. I simply describe you how the language works. So it's not the same explain you why than telling you how. So I'm simply telling you how the language works. That's it. I describe it to you, but I do not go to further details. So you want details, must join the program Bachelor of Spanish or Associated Degree in Spanish Language, and you will learn all those interesting details. So I get up. In Spanish, I to myself get up. Me levanto. You cannot simply say levanto. Levanto would be the get up in English, but you have to use me, what is in red before. So, me levanto. Me doesn't mean I. Me means to myself. That's a reflexive pronoun. You wake up. Te levantas. He or she wakes up. Se levanta. We get up. Nos levantamos. You all get up at 5 in the morning. You all. Se levantan. They get up. Se levantan also. And see that the most repeated reflexive pronoun is se, se. So only for yo, tú, and nos, we have a different one. Here we have, let me see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. Yeah, 14 reflexive verbs. So which are these reflexive verbs in Spanish? Acostarse, go to bed. Despertarse, wake up. Levantarse, get up. Bañarse, take a bath. Ducharse, take a shower. So these are the first 5, right? Let's continue. The next slide. Lavarse el pelo, wash my hair. Secarse, dry off. Afeitarse, shave. Lavarse los dientes, brush my teeth. Peinarse, comb my hair. And there are a few more, 4 more to be exact. Maquillarse, put makeup. Ponerse la ropa, put on your clothes. Quitarse la ropa, take off your clothes. And vestirse, desvestirse, undress. So take off your clothes and undress, which is quitarse la ropa, and desvestirse is basically the same thing. So in order you to understand it a little bit better, let's choose any of these reflexive verbs. I will choose this one, afeitarse, and let's conjugate it. Let's conjugate the verb to shave in Spanish. Shave, shave. Something that I haven't done in a few months. So let's conjugate the verb afeitarse. So the first thing that you have to notice is that afeitar has the ending AR and also has se. That se go to, move in front of the verb when I conjugate. It sometimes it's not exactly se. Sometimes changes a little bit. Let's see how. I shave, afeito. You shave, afeitas. He or she shaves, afeita. We shave, afeitamos. You all shave, afeitan. They shave, afeitan. So, but it's a reflexive verb because you don't simply see afeitar, you see afeitarse. So what is that se here? Is that I put se in front of all the verbal forms? Not exactly. I have to put in this order me for I, te for you, se for he and she. So the pronoun, what I'm putting in front of the verb, is always the same, no matter which verb you are conjugating. So it will always be me, te, se, nos, se, se. So what I'm putting here in front of the verb is what I put in front of any other verb when I conjugate. So in front of the yo form for any reflexive verb, I put me. In front of you, the you form for any reflexive verb, I put te. In front of he or she for any reflexive verb, for the he or she form, I put se. In front of the we form for any reflexive verb, I put nos. In front of the dual form for any reflexive verb, I put se. And in front of the they form for any reflexive verb, I put se. So this me, te, se, nos, se, that set of reflexive pronouns will always be the same no matter which reflexive verb we conjugate. So what changes is the actual verb. So if for example, I conjugate, let me see another verb. Secarse, to dry off the skin. Secarse, so you can divide secarse in secar and se. So let's conjugate secar and put whatever I have to put in front of each one of the forms. Me seco, I dry off my skin. Te secas, you dry off your skin. Se seca, he or she dries off their skin. Nos secamos, we dry off our skin. Se secan, you'll dry off your skin. Se secan, they dry off their skin. You see? What it changes is the verb. The reflexive pronoun remains the same. So you have to know how to conjugate any of the 14 reflexive verbs. But this is how I conjugated. This is a pattern. This is a pattern. And if you are realizing here, in these reflexive verbs, and also in the regular verbs, you do not really have to go crazy memorizing verbs. What you have to learn is the pattern. When you learn the pattern, so you know how the pattern changes, you will be able to conjugate any verb that belongs to that pattern. And let me tell you guys, you are realizing here that I'm not explaining you how to conjugate a regular verb. This is something that we already saw in the previous semester. This is something that we practiced in the last unit. So this is like like I told you at the beginning, like a house that I am building. I'm putting brick on top of the brick, and on top another brick, and on top of that brick another brick, and another brick, and another brick, and another brick. So if you don't have the ground, so you will not be able to progress. So that's why you have to. That's the reason why this is the second semester. So we had the first semester. In the first semester, we learned the basics. Here, we are in a more intermediate, in an intermediate part of the Spanish language. So, but if you don't know the basics that we learn that we were supposed to learn in the first semester, so this second semester is going to cost you a little bit of more like effort. Yeah. So any question about the reflexive verbs before I move to the last part of the class? Well, the last part of the class is how, it's just a reminder that in Spanish, when I'm going to talk about physical or mental states, in English, you say I am, you use the verb to be. But in Spanish, we use two different verbs, depending on which is the state of mind, which is the physical state I'm talking about. So normally in Spanish, to say I am feeling like this, you use the verb estar. Like estoy, I am, Estoy aburrido, estoy alegre, estoy cansado. I am bored, I am happy, I am tired. But there are 7 exceptions. 7 exceptions. With these 7 exceptions, I don't use the verb estar. I use the verb tener. So I say tengo calor, I am hot. Tengo frío, I am cold. Tengo hambre, I am hungry. Tengo miedo, I am afraid. Tengo prisa, I am in a rush. Tengo sed, I am thirsty. Tengo sueño, I am sleepy. So we use 2 different verbs to talk about physical and mental states. Unlike in English, that in English you simply say I am. So any question?